I'm 84 years old, and I mopped floors for a living. 40 years. Same building. Jefferson Elementary School on Carrier Street. I knew every crack in those hallways. I knew which window in the third grade classroom let the rain in when the wind came from the east. I knew which kid was having a bad morning just by the sound of their sneakers on my clean floor. My grandson came to visit me last spring. Good boy, sharp. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, looked me right in the eye, and said, "Grandpa, did any of it matter? Like, does anything we do actually matter?" I didn't answer him right away. I've been thinking about that question my whole life. I just didn't know it until he asked. Let me tell you about a boy named Marcus. It was the fall of 1989. I remember because the Bears were having a terrible season and everyone at the school was miserable about it. Marcus was 14 years old, in 8th grade, and he was the kind of boy that teachers had already quietly given up on, not because he was bad, because he was invisible. Quiet the way kids get quiet when they've learned that speaking up doesn't change anything. I found him one Tuesday morning, sitting in the stairwell outside the gymnasium. School had started 40 minutes ago. He wasn't crying exactly, he was past crying. He was just sitting there with his backpack between his knees, staring at the floor like he was trying to make a decision. I sat down next to him, not because it was my job. It wasn't. My job was the floors. I asked him what was wrong. He shrugged. I asked him if he was coming back tomorrow. He shrugged again, slower this time. That slower shrug that told me everything. So I said the only thing I knew to say. I said, "Marcus, you matter to me, son. Come back tomorrow." That was it. 7 words. He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language, like the sentence didn't quite compute. Then he picked up his backpack, stood up, and walked to class. I went back to mopping. I thought about Marcus sometimes over the years. Wondered if he finished school. Wondered if that morning meant anything at all. You tell yourself it did, but you don't know. You go home, you eat dinner, you watch the news, and the wondering fades. 31 years later, 31 years, I got a phone call. It was Marcus. He was calling to tell me he was coming to my retirement party. He said he'd read about it in the neighborhood newsletter. He said he'd been looking for me for 2 years. He showed up in a shirt and tie. He was a principal. He ran an elementary school on the south side. He had 200 kids under his care, and he said to me with this big wide grin, "Mr. Henry, I figured out what I was supposed to do because of what you said in that stairwell. I've been trying to say it back to kids ever since. I had to excuse myself. I went to the bathroom and I wept like a child. Now, I want to talk to you about something that nobody tells you when you're young and hungry and trying to figure out what your life is supposed to look like. We have the wrong measuring stick. Every single one of us. We were handed a measuring stick when we were young, and nobody told us it was the wrong one. The measuring stick says title, salary, square footage, followers, awards, recognition. The measuring stick says, how big did you build it? How many people know your name? Did you make the news? I never made the news. I mopped floors. But let me tell you what I learned. In 40 years of being invisible in a building full of children, the first thing I learned is this: small moments are not small. People think significance requires scale. They think you have to reach 1 million people to matter. But that is not how human beings actually work. We are not moved by the million. We are moved by the one. The one voice. The one moment. The one person who looked at us on a bad morning and said, "You matter to me." Marcus didn't need a stadium. Marcus needed a stairwell and 7 words. I think about a girl named Destiny. This was 2003. She was 7 years old and she dropped her lunch tray in the cafeteria, mashed potatoes and chocolate milk. Everywhere, and the kids laughed. That particular laugh, the one that goes right through you. She stood there frozen, mortified, about to disappear into herself. I was across the room with my mop before she could cry. I didn't make a production of it. I just cleaned it up and said, quietly, "Hey, this floor needed washing anyway. You did me a favor." She giggled. One giggle, and then she went and got a new tray. I don't know what happened to destiny. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. That's the thing nobody tells you. You rarely get to see the ripple. You just have to trust that the water moved. The second thing I learned is this: presence is a form of love. My brother Ronald, God love him, spent 30 years telling me I was wasting my potential. Ronald was in finance, had a corner office, wore good shoes. He used to say, "Henry, you clean up after other people's kids. That's not a career. That's a consolation prize." Ronald retired 3 years ago. You know who came to his retirement party? His boss, 2 colleagues, his wife and kids. You know who came to mine? 43 people. Teachers, parents, former students. People drove from Indiana. A woman named Mrs. Patterson brought a casserole and cried the whole time. 3 former students, a doctor, a teacher, a firefighter, stood up and spoke. I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you this because I want you to understand something. The people who mattered most in that building were not always the ones with the most impressive titles. Sometimes it was the woman in the front office who remembered every birthday. Sometimes it was the lunchroom lady who slipped an extra roll to the kids who came in thin. Sometimes it was the man with the mop who learned your name and meant it. Presence, real, consistent, caring presence, is a form of love, and love compounds. It earns interest in ways that no financial instrument ever will. The third thing I learned is this: you cannot see your own ripple. This is the hard one. This is the one that requires faith. We live in a time that is obsessed with metrics, likes, views, reach, engagement. If it cannot be measured, people act as though it did not happen. But most of what matters in a human life cannot be measured. You cannot measure the moment a child decides to come back tomorrow. You cannot measure the conversation that keeps someone from making a decision they can't undo. You cannot measure what it means to a frightened 7-year-old that a grown man with a mop looked at her and made her laugh instead of disappear. These things happen. They are real. They compound across decades in ways you will never see, in lives you will never know, in choices made in rooms you will never enter. You are already doing this. You have already done this. You just don't have the data, and you never will. And that is exactly as it should be. I need to tell you about the hardest moment. For a long time, my brother's voice lived in my head. Consolation prize. I'd be mopping at 6 in the morning, building empty, just me and the echo of my own footsteps, and I'd think, what if he's right? What if I took the easy road and dressed it up as a calling? What if I told myself a story about meaning, because the alternative that I just didn't aim high enough was too hard to hold? I was 62 years old when I thought seriously about quitting. Knee was bad. Ronald had just bought a lake house. My son had just made vice president at his firm. I sat in the supply closet one February morning with a resignation letter half written in my head, and then a kid knocked on the supply closet door. Little boy, maybe 9, big eyes. He said, "Mr. Henry, are you okay? You look sad." 9 years old. Came to check on me. I said, "I'm fine, buddy. Thank you for asking." He said, "Okay, you're my favorite person in this school." And then he ran back to class. I tore up the letter I hadn't even written yet. But here's the deepest cut. The thing that still gets me. When Marcus called, when he told me about his school, his kids, the 200 children whose lives he was shaping, he said something I wasn't prepared for. He said, "Mr. Henry, I've said your 7 words to at least 50 kids who needed them. I say them every year. I sat with that for a long time. 7 words. 1,989. And they were still moving. They are still moving right now, in classrooms I will never see, spoken by a man who learned them in a stairwell from a janitor who almost didn't say them. So here is what I believe. After 84 years, after 40 years of floors and children and early mornings, and a brother who thought I was wasting my life, you don't have to build something big to build something that lasts. The buildings that get torn down are the ones made of concrete and steel. The ones that last are made of moments. Words spoken at the right time. A hand on a shoulder. A name remembered. A child told once clearly, "You matter to me." Significance is not the same as fame. Legacy is not the same as recognition. You can be known by millions and leave nothing behind that breathes. You can mop floors for 40 years and set something in motion that outlives you by a century. You will not always know which moments are the ones that matter. That is not a bug in the system. That is the whole design. Because if you could see the ripple from the stone, you might get careful. You might get calculated. You might stop throwing stones altogether. Throw the stone anyway. Say the thing anyway. The water is already moving. I want to talk to you directly now. Just you. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are measuring your life wrong. I don't know you, but I know this. You have, at some point, said something to someone that you have completely forgotten. A sentence, a compliment, a moment of patience when you could have been unkind, a decision to show up when it would have been easier not to. That thing you forgot? Someone is carrying it right now today, as you watch this. Someone made a different decision because of you, and you will never know it, and that is one of the most beautiful and difficult truths I can offer you. So here is what I am asking. Stop waiting to matter at scale. Start mattering right now, at the size of your actual life. Learn the name of the person who cleans your building. Actually learn it. Say it back to them. When you see a child struggling, any child, not just yours, say something. It cost you 7 words. It might cost them their whole future if you don't. Put the phone down tonight and look at the people in your house. Actually look, not at the screen, at the faces, the ones that won't always be there. And if someone in your life, a kid, a neighbor, a stranger in a stairwell, looks like they're trying to make a decision they can't undo, sit down next to them. You don't have to have the perfect words. You just have to show up. That's the whole job. That was always the whole job. My grandson came back last week, sat at the same kitchen table, asked me if I ever answered his question. I told him, yes, a long time ago, in a stairwell on Carrier Street. He thought about that for a second. Then he smiled. I still go back to Jefferson on Tuesday mornings. New janitor's a good man, lets me mop one hallway, just the one by the gymnasium, where the stairwell is. I go slow. I do it right. And every time I pass that stairwell, I say thank you to Marcus for coming back the next day,